When Cherry Blossoms Whisper. Volume 3, Autumn's Unspoken Truth. Chapter 3, Art vs. Poetry. The week following Sakura's hospital visit passed by in a blur. School was a strange, detached routine. Haruto found it hard to focus with the weight of everything he'd learned about Sakura. The image of her quietly holding her mother's hand, her usually composed facade crumbling under the weight of her worries, haunted him. He wanted to do more for her, but for now he could only offer silent support, which he hoped was enough. It was during lunch on Friday that things took a turn. Haruto sat by himself in the courtyard, sketching absent-mindedly in his notebook. The sun was out and the school grounds buzzed with the usual chatter, but Haruto's mind was elsewhere. He couldn't stop thinking about Sakura, her quiet vulnerability, and how distant she had become since her mother's hospitalization. He didn't expect anyone to approach him, but the familiar voice broke through his thoughts. "Hey, Haruto. You busy?" Kaido plopped down beside him, grinning broadly. Haruto glanced at him, giving a half-hearted smile. "What's up?" Kaido waggled his eyebrows. "Well, I heard there's an art contest happening next week. It's an art versus poetry competition, and guess who's on the poetry team?" He leaned in closer, clearly excited. Haruto raised an eyebrow. "You're in the poetry team?" "Yep," Kaido said with a cocky grin. "Sakura's leading the team, and you know I'm on the winning side. My poetry skills are legendary." Haruto shook his head with a soft chuckle. "You're just in it for the attention, aren't you?" Kaido flashed him a mischievous grin. "What can I say? I've got a flair for the dramatic. But hey, you should totally join the art team. We need someone with real talent, and you're basically the Picasso of our grade." Haruto hesitated, his fingers absently flipping through his sketchbook. He had never been one to compete in something like this. He'd always preferred to keep his art to himself, using it as a private outlet rather than something to showcase. But the thought of joining Sakura's team, of working together in a way that wasn't just passive like before, pulled at him. Before he could respond, Kaido added, "I think it'd be fun. And, you know, Sakura's leading the team, so it'll be a chance to get closer to her. You've got to admit it's a great opportunity." Haruto's thoughts flickered to Sakura. It was true. The competition wasn't just about art or poetry, it was about getting to know her better and maybe helping her in the way she hadn't asked for. "All right," Haruto said, closing his sketchbook and meeting Kaido's gaze. "I'll do it. But only because you've convinced me." Kaido gave him a playful shove. "That's the spirit." The following week, the day of the competition arrived. The atmosphere was charged with excitement. Students were running around, preparing their works and setting up their display booths. Haruto found himself standing in the art room setting up his display with a few of his pieces, mostly abstract sketches, nothing too complex, just enough to capture his feelings. But he couldn't help but notice the tension in the air between him and Sakura. She was sitting at a table with the rest of the poetry team, going over their pieces. Her gaze met his for a moment, and for just an instant he saw something vulnerability, maybe? But it was gone before he could process it. "Haruto." Kaido's voice cut through the tension as he bounced over to him, still full of energy. "You've got to help us out here. They're getting all serious about this poetry stuff, and I need someone to lighten the mood." Haruto gave him an exasperated look. "How about you focus on your own team, Kaido?" But Kaido ignored him, dragging him over to where Sakura sat with Rin and a few other students. Sakura looked up as Haruto approached, her expression still as unreadable as ever, though her eyes softened just slightly when they met his. "You're here," she said, the hint of surprise in her voice. "I didn't expect you to actually show up." Haruto shrugged, a bit self-conscious. "I said I would, didn't I?" Sakura nodded but didn't say much else. The silence stretched between them as Kaido made his usual attempt to break the ice, reciting some overly dramatic poem he'd come up with. Haruto couldn't help but smile at how ridiculous Kaido could be. But then, without warning, Rin, Sakura's rival from the literature club, stood up. Her sharp gaze landed on Haruto, and Haruto immediately recognized the challenge in her eyes. "So," Rin began, crossing her arms, "I guess we'll see who's better, huh? Art or poetry?" Haruto frowned, caught off guard. "It's not a competition," he said. "Art and poetry are both ways of expressing yourself." Rin's lips curled into a small, condescending smile. "That's sweet, Haruto, but I'm talking about winning. And poetry is a language of the soul, while art is, well, it's just pictures." Sakura, who had been quiet the entire time, finally spoke up, her voice calm but firm. "Art is an extension of emotion, just like poetry. There's no need to belittle one over the other." Haruto looked at her in surprise. For once, she was standing up for someone other than herself. And it made him feel closer to her. Like maybe she wasn't as emotionally distant as she seemed. Rin shot Sakura a pointed look but didn't reply, instead walking away to finish her preparations. Thanks, Haruto said quietly, not sure what else to say. Sakura just nodded, her usual walls still in place, but there was a flicker in her gaze that he couldn't quite read. He wanted to ask her about it, but with the competition looming, now wasn't the time. The competition started soon after, and the tension between the two teams was palpable. Sakura and Haruto stood side by side as their respective displays were evaluated by the judges. Sakura's poetry was raw, full of emotion, but it was clear that the weight of her family's situation had bled into her words. Haruto's art, on the other hand, was subtle, almost abstract, but it captured a different kind of vulnerability. In the end, their team didn't win. But Haruto realized something more important: this competition wasn't about victory. It was about understanding each other, about expressing emotions that they otherwise kept hidden. As the day ended, Haruto found himself standing next to Sakura again, the final results announced in the background. She was staring at her poetry display, the small victory in her eyes slowly fading. "You did well," Haruto said quietly, his voice carrying a warmth that he didn't even realize he was capable of showing. Sakura turned to him, her eyes softening. "Thanks," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. For a moment, they stood there, neither speaking, just existing in the space they'd created together. And for once, Haruto didn't feel the need to break the silence. He was content just being there, standing beside her. Thanks for watching our video. If you find this video interesting, then please subscribe our YouTube channel. If you're watching this video from TikTok, Facebook, or Instagram, then follow our page for more contents like this.